Good morning and welcome to Dugout Dialog. I'm your host, Blake.
And I'm your host, Matt. On today's episode, we are excited to talk about American League All Star Team and those who got snubbed. Blake, which All Star selections caught your attention?
Well, I guess this is the ceremonial halfway point of the season. And so we take a break and let people kind of rest their feet and either go to the All Star game or go spend time with their family. And I got to say, there's a number of guys on here that did catch my attention. A lot of them you've seen before, there's a couple of new guys, but what Gunnar Henderson's doing in Baltimore, phenomenal. That one was a slam dunk pick. What Aaron Judge is doing in New York, phenomenal. Slam dunk pick. Some of these other ones, they're a little more wishy-washy in my opinion, but let's start running down the list and seeing which one of these all-stars caught your attention.
I would say, I don't want to jump to snubs, but really, I think the first thing that catches your attention when it comes to All Star voting is the guys that don't make it. But of those that did, I would think the one that caught my attention, the surprise, was David Fry as a DH for Cleveland because he had started the year off hot, but the last month, I mean, it's kind of fallen off. So it kind of like puts in a little bit of perspective, like the All Star voting. He had gotten such attention early that those early votes really helped carry him into that spot. Because I look now at what he's done in the last 30 days, and I'm thinking, not quite at All Star level. So David Fry is one. Kyle Tucker, I think he's getting in a similar instance to David Fry. He's getting in on the early body of work that he did, but he's been gone due to injury. And so, I think of some of the guys that are missing from this list, and I'm like, Kyle's great. I mean, Kyle, prior to the injury, is probably in the conversation of a starter, but he's getting in as a reserve based upon how he started off the year. But seeing a guy like Jarren Duran for Boston, I mean,
Yep.
that's a cool story. I mean, that guy just making the roster, but then on top of that, getting to be an All-Star reserve selection. And then there's some others to hit here, but I'll leave those for now. Given some of what I've mentioned, what are your thoughts on some of these guys that are reserve starters? I mean, does it look
Well,
about right?
who had David Fry as an all-star appearance, or to be selected for the team? That's not a household name, so that's not someone you would generally think to be as someone that's going to get the call for it. You got in reserves, you got some great players on here that just aren't getting quite the love that they should. Carlos Correa quietly having a phenomenal season with Minnesota. And then, Bobby Witt Jr. is electric. He's so much fun to watch. He plays a great shortstop. It's just hard to, it's hard to pick and kick out Gunnar Henderson because he's doing the same thing. I know. I wish that we could have, we only have one spot to be a starter, but that's such a fun position. And this guy's a household player for Cleveland with Josh Naylor. I think that he is part of that glue over in Cleveland, and they've been rocking and riding along. And I love to see that they're getting the love with that. Rafael Devers in Boston getting the love. He's having a really good season, and I think he's one of those quiet leaders in the Boston clubhouse. And I saw a head coach when they were announcing that he was going to make the All-Star team, and he basically said as much. He was saying that he's kind of a quiet leader. He doesn't like the attention, but you know what? He deserves the attention because he's having that kind of season. But there's a lot of common themes here. And the most common theme that I'm seeing here is we're seeing names of people that have been here before. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is one of those guys that had a really slow start and he picked it up. But there are other really good options, for first base that could also be picked. Same goes for catcher. And I know Salvador Perez is, a household name who's been around a long time, and he's having a great home run season. He's got a lot of power numbers. But there are other players that didn't get the opportunity, maybe because they're not quite household names, but when we get to the snubs and we start going through it, I think we're going to see that just because the popularity contest didn't pick the princess doesn't mean they didn't deserve the nod.
Yeah, and looking at these, I'm looking at the elected starters. Is there anyone from the elected starters, which at catcher you have Adley Rutschman, first base Vladimir Guerrero Jr., second base Jose Altuve, third base Jose Ramirez, Shortstop, Gunnar Henderson. Your 3 outfield selections are Aaron Judge, Juan Soto, Steven Kwan, and DH is Jordan Alvarez. Do any of those look off to you? Like, is there someone in the reserve list that you believe should be listed as a starter? Or do you think that they got that right thus far?
Mm. I think that Marcus Simeon is an interesting person that could have potentially earned starting honors. Again, a guy that had, tale of two first halves where he got off to a slow start and then picked it up. Man, just right at it. I would love to see a different DH. I mean, Jordan is great, and he again, I've said this before. He reminds me of the old Big Poppy effect, where when you need him to come up clutch in playoffs, he steps up. And during the regular season, he's still, a formidable hitter, but that extra little pressure is where he really thrives. I don't know if DH for Jordan is something that is really necessary. Is he getting the nod because he deserves it? Sure. Are there other options? Yeah, I'd say there's other options.
I think the Marcus Simeon, I would agree. Like there could be something there. Altuve. I mean, he was carrying Houston for a long time, but I think just given like how poor overall they've been for the year, I could see, like Marcus getting, like put there. But I really, aside from like nitpick, I think that I actually like this starting unit. I mean, Adley's been great at catcher. Vladimir Guerrero, I think maybe if he had more competition at first base as far as like numbers, maybe somebody could have, taken over that position. But he's come on so strong the last month and a half that like that makes sense. And then what a great addition, Steven Kwan has just come out of nowhere with matching power with the hitting ability.
I know, and he's got that interesting knob on his bat. He's got the weight on the bat on the bottom, so his swing is a little bit different. Kind of reminds me of a little Barry Bonds-ish. But his bat to ball skills is elite, and that's why he's having so much success. The swing is pretty short and compact. He's really getting down through it, and he's just worrying about the contact, and the ball just goes where the ball wants to go. He's not intentionally trying to lift or carry the ball or manipulate his swing. It's just bat to ball skills, and he's getting hits with it, and I love to see it. When I start to look at position players, and you ask me about elected starters, I'm pretty happy with who got the starting nod. The reserves, there's a couple guys I wish would have get some of the love, but I think it's going to be the tale of both divisions or both leagues. It's really fun to see the pitching that's going to be coming to the All-Star game. I see a stacked lineup here, and I would hate to be either one of these lineups facing these starters. A lot of them have sub-3 ERAs. One or two of them is flirting below 2.5. On the All-Star team here, which one of these pitchers are you looking forward to seeing the most?
Great question. I think it'd probably be guys that aren't really put in the light so much. So Logan Gilbert, I don't think he gets enough love from Seattle. I mean, the pitching staff is what's really carried that team. I don't remember the stat, but I think historically, like this is one of the worst averages from a lineup for a team that's leading their division. So that pitching staff, led by Logan, is really holding them together. And then Skubal, I mean, in the conversation for Cy Young. So I think those two are guys that you don't really see enough just because of where large small market of their teams. I'd like to see some more of them on the big show. What about you?
Skubal is such a great player to watch evolve. If you go back and you check out his stats when he made his debut in 2020, 5.63 ERA, 21, 4.34, 22, 3.52. Last year, 2.80, and then this year, 2.37. That is someone who is learning how to pitch and learning how to pitch in the bigs. And that's so hard to do. And it's so impressive to watch because he just continues to build and build and build. And him being in contention for Cy Young, absolutely. He'll be up there. Seth Lugo is one of my favorite pitchers for Kansas City. He does a great job there. And then you got Cole Reagans as well. You got back to back stud starters, both of them all-star pitchers. Um, and the great part about Skubal and Crochet is that they play on bad teams, so they have to be outstanding because they're not anticipating their team coming out and running over a team. They're going to have to defend a 1 or 2 run lead if they get one, and make that work. So they have to be extraordinary to make up for where their team could be lacking, and that's offense. And the same goes for Seattle. Um, so I love to see it. I love to see good pitching, and I love to see artistry. A lot of these guys here, they're not just flamethrowers. They're pitchers. They're moving counts, working hitters, working the zone, and they're getting better. And I think, again, going back to Skubal, that's exactly why he's doing as well as he is because he's learning how to command, he's learning where to change, and when he can and cannot be aggressive on those players. Out of our reliever class here, I mean, we're gonna have enough time to get enough innings for all these pitchers to get some love, because there's some relievers here that still that still need love too. I mean, one of our favorite players is on here. Tell me about this reliever crew.
Yeah, just to, before I dive deep into the relievers, just looking at the number of pitchers, right? You got 4 relievers, you've got 8 pitchers. We're talking about we got to talk about 12 guys and 9 innings.
Yeah.
No, there's not enough innings for the guys that are there. So there's going to be a few that are going to get pieces of an inning. But I mean, as far as relievers, I mean, you for sure have. I mean, all 4 of these guys are great. Emmanuel, Clay Holmes, Mason Miller, Kirby Yates. These are all incredible selections that make sense. Kirby Yates probably the surprise because he didn't even start the job as the closer for the Rangers. But I mean, you could say the same about Mason Miller too. He wasn't the elected closer for Oakland; he just came on as a flamethrower. But as a whole, as a collective, I mean, you've got, again, some artistry. You've got some guys with some different pitches, and you've got Mason Miller who's just going to come in and light it up. So. No, I'm excited about all the arms as a whole. I am curious who's going to get the start for the game, because
that's a great question.
Because you got just guys that catch my eye. Corbin Burns, we didn't even highlight him yet, or Skubal. I mean, who do you think gets the start? And then I'd love to get your highlight on the relievers.
Yeah, well, I mean. Didn't Baltimore sign Corbin this offseason? Was it last? I can't recall.
No, it's just this offseason. It's his first year in Baltimore.
Yeah, I thought so. What a great pickup. He has been everything as advertised and more. God, there are 8 starters. 4 of them could easily get the nod. Again, I'm not being biased. I'm an Angels fan. I'm a West Coast guy, but Skubal is, again, I already laid out a case of how he's impressing me. I could start him. I wouldn't start Anderson. I wouldn't start Gilbert. I probably wouldn't start Reagans. It would, I'd probably start with Skubal and then Burns, and then work through the system after that. But I mean, you don't have to look very far in the reliever class for me just to catch my eye with Mason Miller. I love watching him. I love watching the flamethrower for the Angels, Ben Joyce. There's a couple guys in the bigs these days that just throw heat, and it's crazy to watch. Kirby Yates is an interesting choice, but as you said, which wasn't what you were thinking, Clay Holmes has been locked down in New York. I mean, imagine having their offense and then having the relievers, to get to him so that he can slam the door. I think that they got a really good thing going over there. I would guess, and we'll talk about this another time, that the Yankees would be buyers to try and find back end of the arm bullpen pieces to really shut that door. You get one more really good bullpen piece back there. That would be bueno.
Yeah, and I'll add in there another contender in that same division. It's been rumored before, it's been speculated. I would love to see Mason Miller in Baltimore. Absolutely. So I don't know. I don't believe it's going to happen. But you talk about like getting an additional piece for the Yankees. I mean, I would please make Mason Miller to Baltimore happen because I would just love to see it happen. I just love to see Camden Yards just be electric in the postseason.
I know one of the all time great ballparks. Great team. They've got so much excitement, and the fan base is phenomenal. That would be awesome. I love how the broad media generally thinks, okay, what big time team are the A's or the Angels players going to?
Yeah.
And then next is going to be the White Sox and Detroit. They're just going. What else do you guys got? Everyone else, if we're going to watch on the West Coast, or I mean, watch on the East Coast, and we'll take some of that West Coast talent because your teams aren't that good right now.
Yeah,
So
unfortunately, that's the case. So I'd love to transition now into talk about some snubs. So there's one in particular that stands out to me as glaring. The others you can make arguments for and against, but there's one that is glaring. Um, is there? Do you think that's the same for you, or are there others that you look and go, yeah, this guy should have been included over another?
well, the players we've got five here. I'd love to hear whom you're thinking of because I've got a couple in mind as well that aren't on here and will likely be honorable mentions. But when I take a look at you know, we briefly talked about the starting pitching for Seattle and George Kirby being number two for Seattle, and I think they have three or four really good starters.
Oh, we haven't even
Uh,
talked about Luis Castillo. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
they're loaded.
totally. So him, I mean, again, pitching is so good this season that not everyone can get in. So that's a good one. Um, I already know that you're going to pick Jordan Westberg because, again, another Baltimore player. I mean, we can't make the entire All Star team Baltimore, but another Baltimore guy that's doing great things, and he's a ton of fun to watch. Which of these players really caught your eye for what you were honing in on?
Well, unfortunately, it's going to be the Baltimore guys. I mean, just because just the transformation of that team, like what they mean to it. But in particular, Jordan Westbrook. And that's because, an element we haven't really discussed about when it comes to all star voting is that element of, is it like, kind of like a popularity contest?
Mm-hmm.
Because I look at someone like Isaac Paredes, and I probably just said his name incorrectly, for the Rays. He was an absolute stud last year, but this year he's still been solid, but not, I mean, truthfully, I don't believe all-star level solid. And so as a reserve, I look here and I go, I mean, Westberg has demolished what Paredes has done for the Rays. So, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that's where I see a snub where I'm like, he should be included in that list. And, just kind of like reviewing his numbers, hitting 281 with a 506 slugging percentage, and just filling the sheet. He's got 20 doubles, 5 triples, 14 homers, nearly, right at 50 RBIs, 44 runs, and 6 stolen bases. He's kind of been like a glue for Baltimore, even though they're stacked with prospects. He's been a huge element of keeping this machine going, while other guys have just constantly, contributed in that mark. I mean, Gunner's leading it, but Westbrook's been the number two behind that. And I'm thinking it makes sense there. So that's
Yeah.
somebody that for me is the glaring one. The other ones like Santander, who's been fantastic, but Westberg's the one that is the real giant glaring one for me. The others though, I would have loved to see Brent Rooker for Oakland in there. He's been the biggest bat for that team, and it would have been cool to see him at DH. But Jordan has definitely been superior, so that's why he gets the nod. But just seeing him,
Yep.
that would have been maybe a nice reserve.
Yeah, definitely. And I'll leave you with my last pick, who's not on the list, and it may be a homer pick, but Logan O'Hoppe is doing really, really well with the Angels. He doesn't have the over the top that get him the nod for an All Star selection, but watch out, people. This guy can hit. He's really quick behind the dish, and he's a team leader. And then a young Angels team, 265 at bats. He's hitting 275 as a catcher, one stolen base. He's got 12 home runs and 40 RBIs. If you remember him at the end of last season, there was a stretch where he was just on fire, and he can do that. He kind of gets a little streaky, um, but he's definitely a person to watch as Salvador Perez phases out of the game. He probably only has a season or two left, and then we've got some fun catchers to pay attention to. So that's my last snub or person to watch out for this next season.
Great. I mean, there's some other ones I'll just quickly throw out there. Luis Gil came on late. Ronald Blanco for Houston. There are some pitchers that would have been fun in here, but I just don't think you could pull anyone else who's already been named because they are far superior than these other guys. So there's some others you could mention, but I like those. And Ohapi, I'm on board with. I think if not for what Naylor's done with Cleveland, Ohapi probably would have been in that selection. So.
Yeah.
I agree, and I'll leave with that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in to Dugout Dialogue today. We hope you enjoyed our discussion.
If you have a question for Blake and I, and you'd like us to answer it on the show, you can connect with us on all social media handles, X, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, or even by email at dugoutdialogue@gmail.com. Until next time, I am your co-host, Matt.
And I'm your co-host, Blake. Thanks for tuning in to today's show of Dugout Dialogue. We hope to see you next episode, and I'll talk to you later, amigo.